Kia ora, Tauranga, Moana. Good morning to everyone, this wonderful place we call home. No mai hau mai, welcome to the Council Hui meeting of the 18th of November 2025. In terms of health and safety, if we hear the alarm sound, please make your way to the nearest exit and we meet down Devonport Road towards the Strand. Please be aware this meeting is live streamed on YouTube and will be publicly available after the meetings. Members, please speak clearly into your microphones and please turn off your mobile phones. We have a public forum this morning and also for speeches we'll have a 5-minute timer up on the screen for both debate and the public forum. I'll just hand over to Councillor Rolleston if he could give us an opening karakia. Thank you.
Tēnā koe mahei mōrena tātou, nau mai haere mai, ki te memo te hapori ki ko tai mai nei, tēnā tātou, kia noi tātou. Tui runga, tui raro, tui roto, tui waho, tui te here tangata, karongo te a, karongo te pō, nau mai te ihi, te wehe, te mana, te tapu, pau ki roto ki a mātou mō tēnei ata, koi ara e rongo, whakiriraki ki runga, turu, whakamaua ki a tīnā. Haumi e, hui e.
Tai kia.
Kia ora.
Before we move into business this morning, it is my pleasure to acknowledge a significant staff service milestone and congratulate librarian Michelle Anderson on 25 years of outstanding service to Council and the community. So, Michelle, if I could just, if you want to come forward, come and sit up at the big table, that'd be great. Welcome, Michelle. It's fantastic to have you here today. I just want to give you a little bit of a brief of some of Michelle's journey with us as Tauranga City Council. Michelle joined the Greerton Library team in the year 2000, and right from the beginning her colleagues recognised her passion and her dedication. She led the library's children's and teen services for 16 years from 2002, along the way transforming our libraries into vibrant and welcoming spaces for rangatahi and their whānau. Among the events she initiated are an unforgettable visit from the Wonky Donkey Man, dress-ups and the elevation of digital games. In 2018, Michelle took on a new challenge as team leader of Library Services Delivery and later as team leader of Library and Community Hubs Neighbourhood Centres, overseeing Papamoa, Greerton, and Mount Maunganui mobile libraries. Through these roles, she continues to shape inclusive, community-focused services that reflect the whātika and manakitanga. Michelle's integrity and thoughtful leadership is deeply respected by everyone she has worked with. She is a champion of innovation, has contributed to public libraries nationally and through LIANZA, which is Aotearoa's Public Library Association, and led key projects such as the mobile library launch and the Heart of the City library development. Michelle, your focus and engagement has ensured that our services are firmly grounded in the real needs of our community, evident in initiatives like the multi-sensory room in the new community hub. Your commitment to mentoring, inclusion and excellence has enriched our organisation and the lives of countless residents. You've helped shape Tauranga's libraries into beloved community spaces, and your inspiring legacy will continue. Thank you for your extraordinary service and congratulations on reaching this remarkable milestone. I've got a little gift for you. Thank you very much, and now I'll hand over the mic if you want to say a few words.
Just a few. When when my boss Joanna asked me if I wanted to come to the council meeting for my 25th anniversary, I said yes, because I knew there'd be a big bunch of flowers. And I thought I could take some to my dad's room in the rest home, because my dad's part of my TCC journey. He was one of a number of South Island wharfies that were recruited to come up to the port of Tauranga in the 1960s to expand it. So I'm an old Mountie. My dad was an old Mountie. As a child, I used the Mount Library. There's my lovely Mount Library colleague there. And so did my dad. He was made to feel welcome, like all my library and council colleagues do, to customers. They helped him with all sorts of things. He read a lot of fiction, he read a lot of magazines, and he read about the share market. And he was very big on buying shares in New Zealand companies, because he thought you should put money where companies benefit from the capital, do good for our economy. And he did quite well, and the rest home bills have been paid for by those shares, so I'm very thankful. But also, I think as a librarian it shows the advantages of having a literate, well thought out population, well organised in information, so I would say that, I guess. I thought I'd go and see my dad with the flowers, and he'd be proud of me. I mean, he wouldn't say it because he's old school, but he would be, because I've survived 25 years in a rapidly changing industry. And so did he, 32 years at the Port of Tauranga. But my dad died last week. Yeah, he was 90 years old. So it's a little bit bittersweet today, but I'm really grateful for having lovely parents. I'm very grateful for having lovely colleagues. They've all come out to support me. They do a wonderful job every day of helping people, not just with books, but with digital information, applying for jobs, applying for visas, and just having a chat. Sometimes that's all people need. So I'm, very grateful. I've got lovely memories of 25 years in Tauranga. The Wonky Donkey, we had 400 people at Papamoa Library. He was a big star of the preschoolers. We broke the fire code. I spent a long time apologising to people, but it was a great day. So it's a good memory. So thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much, Michelle. It's fantastic to have you here and to celebrate this occasion, and thank you for all the service you've given to Tauranga City Council and all our people, and look forward to celebrating 30 and 35 years coming up. Thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. I now note we have an apology from Councillor Baker. Any other apologies? Councillor Kurak, thank you. Councillor Taylor. All those in favour of accepting that apology? Those against? That is carried. So now we move on to our public forum, and we have Peter Koch and Greg Clark from Horidge, and they are going to come and talk about the Wairaki pump station. So if I invite you forward, you'll have 5 minutes to talk, and then any time for questions.
Thanks, Mahi. I'm Greg Clark of Horidge Developments. Well, the pump station, we need it. Horidge Developments has been a supporter of the area since about 1988. It's done Bayfront Estate, it's done Royal Palm Beach Estate, which was 2,000 sections and high-density product, and built shopping centres. Palm Springs is in Wairaki, which is the current development. We've already produced 700 sections there. There's about another 600 to go. It's a high-level development, which we think adds to the area, same as Royal Palm Beach and Bayfront Estate. We obviously do developments on the basis of projections, and we pay for infrastructure by development levies. So The background to this pump station, just in general terms, as I believe, is like as Palm Springs has gone ahead, that pump station was budgeted at about $6 million in 2015, 2016, and we've been paying development levies on that basis, and they've been calculated so that we fund that pump station. Going back through records, it looks like at some stage the pump station's budget now is about $40 million, but that's because council had decided to, excuse me, up the spec or specifications on the pump station. It's not just increased costings, so that it included a 75% capacity for Te Timu, which isn't really Wairaki's responsibility. We just require the pump station. The reason we're here today is because it's of significance important, because this was only communicated to us 10 days ago, that if this isn't satisfied, we won't be able to potentially get building consents for our title stock or stock we've already got resource consent for, which would be of some concern to us, as we've planned accordingly, we've paid money, and we're trying to provide a product to the community, which, as the council knows, then you get rates for it. So it's significant in our minds that this project goes ahead. I would suggest that, looking at the numbers, I think there was also a significant increase because of the Christchurch earthquakes and liquefaction and stuff like that in the foundation. So it's not just the extra capacity which has been allowed for Te Timu. Also, even though it's not our responsible, I would have thought that with 75% of that pump station being Te Timu's responsibility, that council would have already looked at ways to fund that, because those development levies wouldn't be coming in for a considerable period of time until the development at Te Timu went ahead anyway. But from Wairaki's point of view, we require it, and I've done a brief summary that Peter's going to leave, which just outlines our thoughts on it. And we were only notified of this 10 days ago, and consider it significant that we've put some effort in to come along. And I've also had a legal opinion on it, because it would compromise our position commercially if we're unable to let our clients, our customers, get building permits on the sites we've already produced or we've got resource consents for. The balance of the land that we've still got to develop, which council will still collect development levies on, is significant. I think in land costs and services that we've put on, earthworks we've already done, we've invested 28 million in that. But that's my point on it. I think it's very important that we need the pump station, or we need to be able to get building permits. So that's where I see it.
All right, thank you very much. And just open the floor to any questions that councillors may have for either Peter or Greg. No questions? All right. Thank you very much for your time today and coming to present to us.
Cheers.
I now invite Nathan York forward from Blue Haven. He is also going to talk about the Wairaki pump station report. Welcome, Nathan. You'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Tēnā koutou katoa, e te tūkana kei te mihi ki a koe mo tō karakia. And congratulations, Michelle, for 25 years of service. It's hard to come by people like that these days. Last time I looked, 25 years was silver, not flowers, but in this moments of austerity, I get it, I understand. To be fair, I'm a little bit surprised I am here to discuss this wastewater infrastructure matter. We as a company, and Horridge too, we have relied on this infrastructure being in place. We've planned for it, and we've heavily invested to ensure that we can unlock and continue to unlock the development aspirations that we have planned for. We find it we just want to reflect a little bit. Wairakei and Papamoa East has been the long-standing growth area of Tauranga for quite some time, probably 20 years plus. We also note and we agree with staff's position, there's at least 2,000 homes plus the commercial development yet to unlock. Where is that housing growth going to come from otherwise? So that's immediately consented housing product that is able to be developed over the course of time. That's 2,000 homes. We also want to cover off some of the elements within the staff report around risk. I think it's fair to say some of the financial analysis and the risk assessment is probably based on the internal risks, financial risks associated with council. But there's a menu of risks that potentially that can arise if the decision to support the project as planned is not undertaken. And be conscious that we haven't had a lot of time to address the information, but we are looking into it. In my view, there's other financial risk external to council that we need to consider. There's the legal risk and the remedy as a result of not proceeding with the decision. There's clearly the public risk associated with not proceeding with the wastewater that unlocks this future development. Inevitably, there'll be the credibility and political risk that may emerge as a result. So I think it's important to understand there is widespread issues associated with not supporting this infrastructure investment. For us, we thought that the staff report covered all the elements as far as we are aware. What is interesting when we look at some of the financials, a lot of it relates to replacement and renewal of existing asset. Some of it relates to the seismic issues, and they sound to be significant costs, but they are what they are. We as developers also face those costs. And then there's the future capacity associated with Te Tumu. The question for us, are we getting caught up in the Te Tumu negotiations? I'm not sure, but I'd be keen to understand that element of it. So just in closing, and happy to take any questions, just by way of explanation and illustration, just with the most recent residential developments and the early stages of the town centre, we have contributed, and this includes Carronade Street and East Quarter and the Sands, we have contributed 6.5 million of reticulation and two wastewater pump stations. That's just in the most recent stages ourselves to get us ready to further develop Wairakei. Ultimately, that's the other thing that's really probably just in your internal conversations you have is that the Papamoa East Interchange has been a significant, huge investment by all, and including central government, ourselves as private developers, and of course council. A lot of that investment is predicated on us being able to continue to develop, including having the wastewater capacity to do so. So that's an important component that we just want to highlight. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Nathan. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Good morning, Nathan, and good morning to our guests this morning. One of the fears that I have is around the stranded cost. If the infrastructure solution in the future in Te Tumu is different to what has been talked about in the past, going back to Tamarua. Obviously, there are reasons around cost escalations and why the developers down that end are just saying, well, hey, hang on, we need to look at alternative solutions because the cost is getting too high. And so there's 17 million which is sunk in Opal Drive already. That's in the past. In terms of this decision before us today, the risk is that we may have $30 million of sunk cost that's unable to be recovered in the future. And I know that Blue Haven, it's through a different partnership, but across the fence in Bell Road are looking at infrastructure in order to service that development. I don't expect you to be able to answer today on the fly, but would you consider that Bell Road development hooking into Tauranga City Council wastewater infrastructure if it was feasible?
I can answer that today, Steve. We've had ongoing dialogue with staff and management within TCC. We've made a decision that the wastewater, and it's covered off in the report, is going back to the Te Puke upgrade. We need to move with a degree of certainty around our development pathway, which is why this decision is really important. And as you know, we're in a fast track process, and we have to rely on what we think is legitimately available to us. And we've had those conversations with your staff. I can't speak on behalf of Te Tumu and all the things that they do. All I can rely on is the stuff that we've done in Wairakei with Haulage.
Just interested to follow up on that conversation. Did you do a financial analysis around Te Manga versus Te Puke for the wastewater for Bell Road?
No. It was clear to us that the capacity wasn't available, and that was made quite early on. So we've gone back.
All right. No, I just wondered if you'd seen those numbers. So yeah. Any other questions? If there's no other questions, thank you very much, Nathan, for your time today.
Councillor.
I appreciate you coming to talk to us.
I do have one request, because it's actually quite an important one. Can we get some formal feedback today, if the decision is made today, on the pathway forward?
Yeah, the decision will be in public and available.
Okay.
Yeah, we can let you know today. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Enjoy the day. Cheers.
I know we've got Spencer Webster here. You want to come and talk to Wairaki, or you? Yeah. Yeah. I'll just get Councillor Rollison to give you a welcome, if that's right.
He mi poto ki a koe e te rangatira nā pōtiki nau mai hare mai ki tēnei whare o te kaunihira nō reira ki a kahai ho.
Sorry, you'll have 5 minutes and then time for questions afterwards. Thank you, Spencer.
I appreciate the opportunity to address the council at short notice. I got an email that this was happening on Friday. We had our AGM on Saturday. I looked at it yesterday, and our resource management manager rang me and said, hey, did you know there's this meeting on today about the Wairakei pump station? I've been to 2 meetings in the last 2 weeks with staff. I wasn't aware that this was happening. The impression I was given that this was a ongoing conversation with more work to be done around this. So I was surprised to read the report last night. In terms of where we are, well, the first thing that took me by surprise was not only the timing, but also the content of the report. And I was surprised to see that if you read that report, there's no mention of any engagement with Ngā Pōtiki. There's no mention of any of the documents we put forward to staff about this issue. We had proposed a pause to work through some issues in a CIA that we've actually done multiple CIAs. They've been with the council since at least June. Nick Johansson did provide some kind of response in September, and so my understanding was we were still working through our process. So I don't know quite how we've got to this, but yeah, I was certainly shocked to read the report last night to suggest that moving forward with the pump station was consistent with a Te Ao Māori approach. That certainly doesn't seem to be what any of the iwi or hapu are saying, not what we've been saying. So really, I think there's a matter of process here. We're open to having the conversation about this, but yeah, it just seems that we're doing all this good work around Truman Lane and that kind of thing with the discussions we're having about an MOU, but that this is kind of as soon as we go out to Papamoa, all of a sudden we seem to be put into an irrelevant box, or we're just the kind of nuisance on the side. So again, I don't know how it's come to this. But I still think there is some work to be done around it. Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. Have we got any questions? Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, thank you. One is a quick question. What is CIO?
Sorry, it's a customary impact assessment report. So when we get a consent application, we write a report that says this is our view on it, and that's what that is, yeah. So,
And my main question was, like, what have you been putting forward as a direction for what you would like to see?
it goes back to some of the presentations I've made around the burden that we've had to bear with the wastewater treatment plant in our backyard alongside the other infrastructure. And the conversation we're wanting to have is what is the long-term future? What is the capacity? When does it reach max capacity? And how much can you send? Because it's not only from Papamoa that the wastewater comes, it's from the other way as well, so all over town. So what we've been wanting to have a conversation is that, look, at some point you can't just keep sending it all back to Te Maunga. There has to be a conversation about when do we say that's it for there, and then you've got to look at other solutions elsewhere. So that's the conversation we've been raising for some time now, and I think our CIAs just reflect that there is, it may not be an on-the-ground impact at where the pump station is going, but ultimately, if we all just keep sending the capacity down to Te Maunga, then it has that kind of cumulative impact, because later on someone's going to say, oh, we need another bioreactor, we need another, whatever the ponds are and things like that. So yeah, that's the conversation I'm keen to have, is that if we can get to see what the future is and where it kind of maxes out at some point, and we know what the full extent of it is, then it's easy to work back from that as to what you can say about the existing projects as they come online.
Just a bit of a, it's not a big question, it's a little one. So you've been dealing with Nick. I just wonder whether Nick moving on has been, where the thread's been lost here maybe, do you think, or is it?
Possibly, because I know not only he left, but there are possibly a couple of others, but yeah, it could well be that. I'm not sure. Maybe sometimes in the handover things get skipped, but yeah, I'm still trying to grapple with the fact that I was sitting in 2 meetings in the last 2 weeks, and I was surprised to read the report last night. So I don't know what the answer to that is, though.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's an excuse. I'm just saying, it's something we need to learn from, potentially, if it is that. Our systems need to be more robust, probably.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think we'll follow that up with staff around where this got lost. But this, as we heard before, this has been in progress for 10 years. So it'd be interesting to know whether there was something done at an earlier date. But we'll follow that up. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Spencer, for joining us today. That ends the morning public forum. I note that we're going to have another public forum will be taken at 1 p.m. And that will be on issues that are going to be dealt with in the afternoon session. So I thank you very much to all our morning public forum. Acceptance of late items. I'm unaware of any late items. There's no confidential business to be transferred into the open. Change to the order of business. There will be a few changes. How we're going to run today is we'll take up to 11.5 this morning. We will then go into publicly excluded, take a couple of those items, which is 13.1 to 13.3, and I will be leaving the meeting around midday, and Deputy Mayor Schooler will be taking the reins for the rest of the items. So we've got a lot to cover, so we'll get into business. Our first order of business is the confirmation of minutes of the council meeting held on the 7th of October 2025. This is on page 10 of your agenda. I just ask if there's any corrections that anyone would like to mention on those minutes. Yes, Councillor Taylor, sorry.
Sorry, we left one item, item 11.1, Amanawa Falls Reserve name change. We left that to lie on the table. Do we know where that's at, and will that come back?
No, well, we can follow that up. All right, I'll ask then if I can have a mover and seconder to accept these minutes as a true and correct record of the meeting. Councillor Schuler, thank you. Got a seconder. Councillor Morris, thank you. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried. I ask if there's any declarations of conflict of interest for today's meeting. There's none to be recorded at this stage. If you come aware of a conflict, please let me know and we will record that as we go. There is no deputations, presentations or petitions, and there is no recommendations from other committees. Therefore, we'll get into business, and the first, as we've heard from our three public speakers this morning, is a fairly significant issue to deal with, and this is the Wairaki pump station funding risk. This is on page 26 of the agenda. Just to frame this up, there is a project in progress and that has now been designed and ready to go to the next stage, which is construction. It is a significant pump station for wastewater to get it to Opal Drive and then back to Tamanga. We have some capacity issues in this area, and there is a large funding risk, which potentially could be a ratepayer funded risk, because about 75% of this project is to be funded by Te Tumu. As we know, Te Tumu are currently looking at alternative methods of dealing with wastewater, in which case we would end up building this and not be able to recuperate all the cost for building it through a development contribution. So this is a significant project and a significant risk for our council. So that's why we're having this today, and we're discussing it. And I'd like to pass over to Ranaka and Wally, and yeah, we'll just get them to maybe frame the report, and then I'm sure we've got a number of questions. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just by way of introduction, this pump station has been on the plans for 20 years or so, as far as the development of Papamoa East and the rest of the Te Tumu goes. Since 2018, we've been getting into more detailed planning around that, and you've seen in the report some comments around the optioneering for that. So we've looked at that site and other sites, and that was selected. I can give you comment about the sites if you wish to get into that. There's also a lot of optioneering done around, once a site was selected, around the options of the way it can be designed and constructed, and I can give you more detail on that if you wish. We've phased the construction so that it really only deals with Papamoa East to start with, so it's phase 1, and phase 2 is the Te Tumu investment. It's essential infrastructure, and we've sweated the asset at Golden Sands for some time now. We have deferred some of that capital cost to make sure that we're doing just-in-time investment for the city. And yeah, and as you've also seen in the report, sweating that asset has now got to the point where it's sweating rather hard. There was some comment around our level of consultation, I guess, and it's not addressed in this report. This report has really addressed the construction methodology and the funding matters. So we have got a resource consent lodged with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. The Bay of Plenty Regional Council have elected to assess that as non-notified, and there has been consultation with Ngā specifically, and their request was that they gained affected party status and that we went non-notified. We left that decision to the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, and they are happy to go non-notified, so rather than limited notification. Spencer also mentioned that he only became aware of it on Friday. We did notify Lara Burkhardt of Ngā on Monday last week, so they've had that information for a week about this report. So that was a phone call made as a matter of courtesy just to advise them that this report was upcoming. So I've just jumped in and given a bit of that background. I wasn't expecting that to come before you today, but I just wanted you to be aware that some of those matters that have been raised have been addressed in the past. I'm happy to leave it there if you wish.
Happy to open the floor to questions. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Mayor. You would have seen the Hail Mary pass. I tried to pass Nathan York there about the Bell Road development. What are some options going forward to reduce that potential for ratepayer funded risk? The way I see it is that the potential cost of servicing Te Tumu is so high, the developers down there have naturally said, hey, we've got to look at alternate options. The pump station's only one part of servicing Te Tumu. There's the pipes back to Maunga. How can we ameliorate that risk in the future? Because it's one of those sleepless night kind of decisions. I mean, growth paying for growth is one of our core values. We're in a situation where developers have naturally said, hey, this is too expensive. And now we're in a place where we're looking to make a decision today where in the future that cost could be sunk. So I need some help there, please.
Could I just clarify, are you asking us how we can reduce cost, or are you asking us how we can, as a system, better accommodate growth paying for growth?
It's more with the whole Eastern Corridor. So beyond just this particular project today, but how can we get the cost down of servicing that wastewater infrastructure so that the developers in Te Tumu are comfortable accepting the plan as it's been outlined, because the costs are reasonable in their eyes. And so that they're not having to look at these alternate ways of delivering infrastructure, because the status quo has just become so expensive.
Yeah, thank you for that. As part of my onboarding at TCC, I have started looking at the scope and the cost of this specific one. I can't immediately answer the question and tell you, yes, we found a secret way to get 10% out. I wish I did. I would prefer to take an action to do an in-depth analysis of the costs and where there may be options for reductions, rather than talk hypotheticals today, if that is okay. What I can say is that the cost...
Yeah, is that work on? I think we've started that work, have we? Or I think we've certainly had conversations around this table around, getting to a level that doesn't ensure they need alternate infrastructure.
I suspect Te Tumu will have to go through similar cost estimating exercises we've done. What I do know is that the team have done some extensive internal challenges. Wally, would you care to detail?
Yeah, I think we touched on this in the workshop, but there's been early contractor involvement on this site, and we've really value engineered it as hard as we possibly can, and I think that we've got probably the best option for phase one that we can possibly get on that site. It is a difficult site, and just remember, most of eastern Papamoa is similar. The soils underlying the sands are not good. and right across that area. And when it comes to developing Te Tumu, I'm sure that those developers are going to find similar conditions because the Waiaraki waterway goes right the way through their area as well before it cut back for the discharge. So once they get down to 6 or 7 metres depth and start building pumping stations, they're going to be on piles. They're going to have to be resilient as well to seismic events. And they're going to be dealing with liquefiable soils for their pipe network as well. So while this looks expensive, once they do their work, they're probably going to get a few of those. I think I heard the Hail Mary moments. I think they've got a few coming as well. I suspect so.
Councillor Taylor.
I did have 2 questions, Wally, but you've answered that last question. Was, you know, we've obviously had to increase our costs given extra piling and that sort of stuff from 10 years ago or more. So, yeah, Te Tumu will face similar issues, I would imagine. Just going back on Spencer's questions earlier, you sort of said that we've done a lot of work on that. So what is the current status of that? Where exactly is the application and that sort of stuff?
The consent is being processed by the Bay of Plenty Regional Council at the moment as a non-notified consent.
Councillor Rolleston.
Yeah, could I just pick up a little bit more on that consent? We had Spencer, as you know, talk around the CIA, the Cultural Impact Assessment. I guess I'm probably a little bit surprised when we read that Te Ao Māori approach paragraph. It feels very generic. No mention of Ngā Pōtiki, no mention of the CIA. And then we're talking around non-notified. I guess I'm making sure we're not talking past each other. And I think I heard there was a phone call. We've heard from their CEO that said it's the first he was aware on Friday. Yep, you might be able to say that A didn't talk to B, but he's been in this building twice. We've been talking hard, and we've had a specific meeting recently about the relation with Ngā Pōtiki and how we need to look at this in its entirety. And I think by just about throwing the ball over to next door to saying, our regional council, you've picked it up and you've agreed it's non-notified, so we can sort of separate ourselves from it when we're talking around the importance of the relationships. And it feels to me we might have missed an opportunity here. I know, you know, that we've got to get things moving because of what we've just heard earlier and what's on here. But, you know, I guess I think we could have done better, and I think we do need to do better. And I think we've heard clearly from Ngā Pōtiki today that they're miffed around how this actually happened and how they weren't engaged. So I just want to leave it there, but I'm probably interested in how we might, because we can keep going, but you know, it's not when it's going to be a difficult road if we don't sort of work closer with Ngā Pōtiki.
Noted, and my apology, I wasn't aware of the sensitivities as part of my onboarding, and I would happily work with both of you to do better.
Councillor Schuler and then Councillor Crowther.
Thanks, Mayor, just through you. Just, Wally, you talked about how this is, obviously you're talking about what's going to happen and what we're developing in the next few years. We've heard from the developers, they've still got 2,000 lots, 1,700 are consented. You know, then you've got on top of that, we've got the commercial. And so while it sounds like it's a future issue, like you said, this has been going on for 20 years. So in terms of what's already been done at Te Maunga and in terms of that broader network, has that already been factored into some of the work that we're seeing? So I suppose the question is, it looks like it hasn't happened yet, it looks like it's future, but how much of that network planning is really, you know, coming through to satisfy, you know, and again, particularly at Te Maunga, existing need that we just clearly have right in front of us.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a comprehensive Eastern Corridor study that addresses the three waters. And this has been in place for a long, long time now, and there is subsequent upgrades that are needed for that network to transfer the wastewater from the east westwards towards Tamonga. And Tamonga has been our growth treatment plant and is still our growth treatment plant, and it's taking all the future growth, not only from eastern Papamoa, but also Tauriko West and the southern parts of the development of the city as well. So currently Chapel Street is capped, so all our growth is really heading towards Tamonga.
Thank you, Wally. I understand that we will get back as council significantly more in revenue if we go ahead with this from the Wairaki development, as opposed to Councillor Morris's concern around the Te Tumu viability. So putting Te Tumu to the side, I guess what I was interested in was this morning hearing about the original cost of the proposed pump station. Was that increased solely for Te Tumu capacity, or was that just because of cost inflation and so forth? And if it was for Te Tumu, is there an option, should we choose it, to actually have a cheaper alternative than what is being proposed now and look at other options for Te Tumu?
I think it's important to remember that it is still fully funded within the 24-34 LTP.
No, I understand that. I'm asking the question, if, and maybe Renika, you could maybe answer, is there an option that we've been presented with for the original scale-back proposal just to cope with Wairaki and Papamoa East area and not Te Tumu, and then have another option to look at Te Tumu?
I am not fully across the original numbers, but I know the original numbers are about the same cost as just the earthworks at the moment, so I suspect they will have been scope growth rather than just price inflation. And with regards to the optioneering, I'll let Wally answer a detailed question about stage 1, stage 2, but any option to send us back to the drawing board to find an alternate design or an alternate site will highly likely lead to overflows in our wastewater system. Wally, would you like to take the detail on stage 1, stage 2?
If you'd like, yes. So we've phased the construction of the wells. So we're putting in a full-scale well, but the above-ground elements like the rising main. So we're only doing the first rising main at this point, and there is about a 1.6 kilometre section of undersized rising main, and that is in PVC, and that has been strained over the last 20 years with pump surges, I guess, when pumps come on and pumps come off, that there is surges within that pipe. So it's at the end of its life, given the amount of work that it's had to do. So that is the first section of the rising main that would need to be replaced. So that's a straight-out renewal function. And then within the pump station itself, we're phasing the size of the pumps, the size of the electric cabinets, and also the generation on-site standby generator. So all of those things will be changed out over time as we develop and then have to put in the second rising main for Te Tumu. So we have cost optimised as much as possible the development of that pump station.
So just to be crystal clear for anyone listening, this is not due to change in scope. This is due to cost increases from a very small number of millions to now 27 million, is it?
The main change in scope would be the groundworks because of the changes in geotechnical standards.
Just, you discussed that replacing the 1.6k of main. Is that, have we looked at the lining option? I know we've done that in some of our other pipes, as a relining that.
It's too small anyway, and a liner would make it even smaller, so it needs to be replaced for capacity as well. Okay.
Then just from the report, I'm just interested, because reading the report, it seems like the only constraints we have is the upstream flows, not the downstream from Golden Sands. Is that correct?
In a little way, we have immediate upstream constraints. They're with us right now. Downstream, we can sweat it for a year or two, and that's why we're doing the pump station first and the rising main second. So we're doing them sequentially. So the rising main will be a couple of years, well, it's trailing the pump station. So in a little way, yes, but that 1.6 kilometre section needs to be done as well, as soon as.
I'm just trying to get an understanding of this a little better. So paragraph 26, the addition of the peak dry weather flow will reach 84 litres a second by 2034. So saying then that there'll be a risk of wastewater overflows daily, even in dry weather. So I know these things take time, but we've got a problem today, not like this is suggesting that we have a problem in 2034 that we've got to address.
Oh, sorry, that's probably not clear. So at the moment, the pipeline going into that pump station has a capacity of 85 litres per second. That's what we've modelled. So at 84 litres per second, we know we're going to get overflows because there are peaks. That's the average daily flow. So we get peak daily flows as well. And on top of that, when we take parts of the network off for maintenance, whether it be cleaning out pump wells or doing some other works in that area, you shut them down for a while, and we allow several hours within our network for the wastewater to build up just in the well, but also in the pipes leading into that pump station. We use that as reserve capacity so that we've got time to do works on the network. When that is opened up and all that water flows through, we're dealing with much bigger flows. And there are 5 pump stations pumping into Golden Sands pump station. And remember, it's only designed as a local pump station. It's not designed as a pump network, part of the network. So we've got 5 pump stations pumping into a local pump station. And when you go out there and look at it, it's just a couple of lids in the side of the footpath. It's a tiny little thing. So we've had one overflow, and we know we're going to have more if we don't do something about it. So it's probably a little bit misleading, that item 26. So yeah, it's really right in front of us right now.
Have we through all this period, have we looked at an option to go to Te Puke?
No, we haven't.
Okay. Is there a reason? Obviously, we're going into a new waters organisation. It's closer than Te Manga. Is it? We've got Blue Haven that's about to put in a pipeline to service their development. Is there a world where that is a better option?
There's certainly a future world where we're doing sub-regional planning now, and we're looking at the way we can better service the eastern and western areas at the moment, and we're pretty certain that we're also going to need an inland treatment plant in the future as well. We just don't know if that's going to be east or west at this point in time, but we are certainly looking sub-regionally at the capacity of our water and wastewater networks. That's joint planning we're doing, yes.
And I guess just on that, so can this, we build this, can we redirect it back to Te Puke if we needed to, or is it once you build this, it's going to Te Manga and that's the only place it can go?
It's the latter, I'm afraid. To turn pumps around and pump in a different direction, the heads are different, the static heads are different, the pump heads. So you really need to design, each pump station is designed specifically for the catchment that it's in and its discharge point. They're all specific designs.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Mahe. Thank you for the report and the explanations, and it was good to have our speakers earlier. Just in terms of the recommendation, can you just confirm where we say if it was that we were approving option A, we hear lots of, if we don't do that, there's costs and there's DCs we'll collect in the future. There's a conversation, and the report talks about long-term plan. Where do we see the costs that we are being asked to approve? If we progress, where is the table that sets out that means these costs in this current year, which hopefully are no more than we've approved, and in future years. Is that set out in the report so we know what we're actually approving from a financial perspective?
I believe it's been set out in previous reports. This one was just addressing the, sorry, if it's not in there, yeah. I don't have the number right in front of me.
Has anyone been able to see what costs we're being asked to approve? Because I thought there was too, but I've been trying to find it, and we should, when we're being asked for a recommendation, number one, the executive summary should always say if we're approving something to progress, we should know the financial cost that we're progressing, and I just hoped I would find it, but I haven't.
Well, we'll certainly be spending less this financial year because we're behind time. Oh, sorry. Sorry, attachment 4. I was just looking for it.
So again, if we're going to be transparent in everything we do, and we've got our people that are interested in where we're taking decisions that might be expensive for rates in the future, the executive summary does need to say what the costs are rather than having to find it in attachment 4. It's really important that we do put the numbers up so we know exactly what we are approving, please.
Thank you for that feedback. I will take that on. I am certain that this project was approved as part of our budget and LTP, so this is not a request for additional fund. This is a request to accept the risk, I believe. But maybe someone, Christine, can you maybe help with that?
Yes, that's correct. So under normal circumstances, the staff would have had delegation to proceed because it is within the budget, but because the funding risk arose, we felt that that was not appropriate for staff to make that decision, so we wanted to report the funding risk here. But I take your point around including the financial information on cost. That would have been helpful, but that was predominantly focused on risk.
I think as well, just again for onboarding, as this council did not put the long-term plan 24-34 in place, so we are looking at each financial year as we come in to be approving. We also know when the long-term plan, we tend, an approved long-term plan then has subsidies change it and numbers change. So yes, I will always ask for the financials to be in the recommendation and the executive summary, please. Thank you.
Councillor Morris.
Thank you. I'm just reminded of similar, not dissimilar situations in Auckland where Watercare have been having trouble servicing developments up north and to the west. In terms of trying to mitigate the risk of the overflows, accept the infrastructure as is, but is there a world where I don't want to get ahead of things, if things were being redesigned or whatever, if there was something that upset the apple cart, is there a trucking or other solution that can cope with those peak flows and the risk of overflow, rather than relying on the infrastructure in the ground as a temporary measure?
When it comes to peak flows, trucking will not keep up with it. Definitely, yeah.
Plus, we would have to assess the impact on the roading network if we did have very significant trucks in the area. We just haven't looked at that as an option. Plus, when you connect trucks and disconnect trucks, it can get a bit smelly.
Councillor Schuler.
Yeah, thanks again. Just picking up on something, sorry for cutting you short.
That's right.
Just picking up on something you said earlier, Wally, around, we had one overflow, which is a failure of the system, obviously. To just how significant was that and where, I suppose, is a question, but also flowing on from that, if we don't do what is planned, like just, without, and it's not a fear-mongering question, but what does that look like if we leave it as it is? Are these what's gonna happen? And, just in a pragmatic, from your years of experience, what are we gonna be looking at around the table?
As the Wairaki stream got floated.
Yeah, the word in the report is imminent, and that was deliberate. I can't tell you if that's going to be tomorrow or it's going to be next year. But it will happen.
As a point of note, though, the system didn't actually fail. The system's doing what it's designed to do. It's just running over capacity. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm just interested, we're building a pump station down the road at the moment. So what standardised design and elements have we been able to bring into this one to save money?
So all our local network pump stations, we have a standard design for pump stations. Those are the little local stations, the ones where you see the two lids on the side of the road and that sort of thing. So they're in our infrastructure development code, and they're widespread right across the city. We have over 200 pumping stations, and most of them look like that. These larger pumping stations are bespoke. They need to be designed to handle the catchment that they're dealing with, because they have lots of different pump stations pumping into them, and some of those pump stations pump into multiple pump stations before it gets to the big one. So they need to be able to handle those peaks, so they are designed specifically, and this is one of those cases. It's a bespoke design. Also, the constraints of the site obviously have an impact on the type of design for the pumping station, whether it's at Memorial Park or at Papamoa.
And can we have an estimate? This is about 41 million. What are we talking about Opal Drive? How much is that?
Sorry, I'll have to consult a colleague on that one.
No, that's all good.
Do you have an idea what Opal Drive is?
Good morning.
Yeah.
The current forecast outturn cost for Opal Drive is just short of 36 million.
Okay. So what's the driver of 5 million more for this one?
The primary drivers are the worst site in terms of geotechnical terms, so the very large piles that we need to sink down to 49 metres below current ground level. Because it's a constrained site, it's a very long construction program, which is driving some cost as well.
Right, Councillor Crowther.
I had 3 questions. One is, on the table on page 42, are the projects such as Opal Drive to Tumu Rising Main, and the second Rising Main, which are predominantly for Te Tumu, I just want to be very explicit that those large amounts of expenditure out of the 327 million program costs for this stuff, is that group of projects, which is worth 222 million, not needed if Te Tumu, in that form, if Te Tumu has alternative solutions? So in other words, we won't be bound to investing any of that money if it's just Wairakei and the nearby area.
I may need to call on Claudia, but that is my understanding that in the absence of Te Tumu, those second phase 2 rising mains aren't required.
Good morning. Yes, so not all of the, so there would be still investment needed, even if Te Tumu would be serviced through a different means. And part of this alternative assessment, we are actually looking at, to give you a full picture of what the remaining investment for the Wairakei and Papamoa area would be, in addition to an alternative servicing of Te Tumu as well. So that information will be available in around about 9 months.
At the moment, there's no estimate of what the Wairakei portion of that would be, other than the 2.5%, 0%, 30% that are stated here.
No, at the moment, I couldn't give you an estimated number, but we know there's still investment needed.
Yeah, but they'd be very scaled back based on this, especially if you have one major project with 0%, the other one 2.5% contribution from Wairakei. I presume that's not needed to anything like that scale.
It would be scaled back, but the question would also be how much resilience we want to allow. So at the moment, we have only one rising main in liquefiable land. So if we actually decide we want to have more resilience for our network, so if we have got a break, there's another means, you would still need potentially a second rising main. So there would be still a potential significant cost.
I think that'd be good to highlight in future for any, similar kind of developments in terms of, so we get an idea of what, like if we approve this, then there'll be certain things flowing from it. Second question was the NPV calculation. I'm presuming on page 47, I'm presuming that other cost means Wairakei. Is that right? Because the other column says Te Tumu. So I presume when it's labelled other cost, I'm not sure what other would refer to. But as in that summary, well, on the bottom of page 46 where that table is, or on where you can see it easier on page 47, it's other cost. I was just having trouble kind of making sense of this. So we're sort of saying the cost, the total cost, if we redesign the pump station, to the Mayor's point, or to his question, if for whatever reason we redesign the pump station, we would end up being $3.7 million worse off in net present value. We would have an increased risk in the short term. We would be worse off in the longer term. But having heard my colleagues at work around trying to reduce costs of projects, then that's the other side of that discussion. So I'm just wanting to be clear that in that equation is the other cost column relating to our immediate decision around Wairakei, or is that something, I'm trying to understand what that refers to.
So what I've done there is split out, it's the costs, the total costs of the costs, the split I've put in there is where the funding is coming from.
Yeah,
so you've got funding that's coming from Te Tumu and the funding that is coming from other sources. The other sources of funding, you can see if you look on...
So that's the rates as well.
Is the renewals and the Wairakei funding.
Okay.
So there's some of the, one of those projects has significant amount of renewals in there because it's replacing pipe that's already there. So it's not saying that it's other costs. It's just where the funding is coming from.
Okay. And then the last question was, I'm wondering why we used a 3% discount rate when we've just had another thing presented with a 6% discount rate, and a short time ago we had another one with an 8% discount rate. And I'm trying to understand the logic of our discount rates.
I must admit there wasn't a particular logic around that. The main reason that I didn't get too excited about this discount rate is because it actually makes no difference. If you do the NPVs, whether it is at 2% or it is at 20%, the actual ranking of the NPVs doesn't actually change. So I didn't actually spend too much time thinking, I must admit, thinking about what the discount rate was, because it makes absolutely no difference to the ranking.
Right. Any further questions? Right, if there's no further questions, I'll ask, I believe Councillor Rolleston has a slight amendment to add to the... Would you be happy to move with the amendment? Yes. Yeah. So we'll just try to get that. So is that D? Is that the replacement for D? Was that? Yeah. Just get that up on the screen and then I'll ask if we have a second up. Sorry, if we just go and we just can consider it, and I'll see if we've got a seconder. Yeah, Councillor Taylor will second, so we can replace D. Councillor Rolleston, would you like to talk to the motion? Just, sorry, microphone.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that motion. I think we've heard from Ngā Pōtiki about the, I guess, their desire to be more involved. So I think that was supported by General Manager Operations. So I think that makes a simple way of preserving that relationship. Obviously, there's much more to the resolution that we've heard, and on balance, I think it's the appropriate resolution to be supporting. So that's what I'd like to say.
Would you like to talk or reserve your right?
I think this thing's been around for a long time. I think Wally's mentioned 20 years. The community has an expectation, the developers have an expectation. We don't want sewage flowing down the streets, which is potentially imminent. I think Wally used the word imminent. To me, we have to keep on with this. It has to go ahead. At the same time, being mindful that Te Tumu is the opportunity to make sure that this is costed effectively and the right people are paying. So we have to work hard to make sure that Te Tumu comes into the system and they don't go off on their own bat to do a different system to the plan that we already have. So that'd be my message to the council. We need to look hard at how we make that happen in the next few years.
Councillor Morris.
Yeah, what a difficult one. I mean, you've got Wairaki developers who have developed and looked for certainty and made business decisions based on decisions that have been made in council, which you would hope would be somewhat certain. And so we had their representatives here today advocating for continuing the position, which you can absolutely understand. We've got developers in Te Tumu who are looking at wider infrastructure costs which are unpalatable, which affect the viability of that entire development. So I can understand why they're showing interest in this decision today as well. And we've had discussions with them around alternate options and status quo as in Te Maunga. We've had Mātua Spencer come in from Ngā Pōtiki, and we know Ngā Pōtiki's position there about hosting the entire city's wastewater treatment and outlet in their rohi, say for Chapel Street, which gets pumped across through the southern pipeline. And then we have the people of Papamoa, who I think would agree with the people of Ngā Pōtiki that they don't want to see floaters in the Wairaki stream, bottom line. And if you look at that compared to all the other things we discuss and debate in this chamber and other decisions and things, they really are a sideshow compared to that, because for people, a well-functioning wastewater reticulation network is a bottom line in terms of confidence in their council to deliver services. Everything else is a bit of a sideshow in that regard. So I support the motion today, but we need to get, as Councillor Taylor has said, we need to get the costs down for the wider Te Tumu development and getting infrastructure in there. And we've had an undertaking from the General Manager of Infrastructure around that, and that's critical because if Te Tumu is not viable, then what does that mean for house prices for our people? What does that mean for so many of the businesses in our city that rely on the construction sector? It's not good. So, in a nutshell, I support it. We've got to make sure that growth pays for growth somehow through all of this.
Councillor Roseboom.
Thanks, Mayor. No, I don't actually support D as it's currently written. I supported the original recommendations. This whole project is part of our long-term plan. It's part of our growth strategy. Multiple developers have made large commitments to the Wairaki and the Wairaki Township based on commitments that this council has made to those developers. we're being asked here today to assess the funding risk to our ratepayers based on a change or a delay in a development that's been on the books for 20 years, hoping current central government policy will allow that development to go ahead, and then this will be a fairly moot point. We must be very mindful that this whole project of Te Tumu is also in our regional deal. We may have different funding mechanisms, and we cannot signal to Wellington a change of mindset at the 11th hour because it's become slightly unpalatable. We're trying to put together a large growth strategy for this region, both us and Western Bay, and we need to be committed and stick to our guns. We've made a commitment to Te Tumu, we've made a commitment to the regional deal, and I'm very supportive of both those commitments. And the current long-term plan has funding for this project in it. There's just been a slight hiccup with the developers at Te Tumu who have got sick of waiting for us to get on and get the development going. So I'm not entirely supportive of D, but the rest of the recommendations I fully support.
Sorry, can I just get clarification of that? Because
Well,
D1 is effectively
the same as it's D2 that I'm not supportive, because that's already been consulted on in the 2034 long-term plan, I'm assuming.
Okay.
It's already been discussed, and
so shall I take D2 separately?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Is there any other, Councillor Crowther?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Morris. This is kind of a tricky decision because there are big long-term implications from the $327 million program, and we know that Te Tumu is not at all over the line in any form at all, and we also know that we may not, despite what Councillor Taylor put forward as a potentially good idea, it may amount to nothing. We may not have Te Tumu, we may not have Te Tumu's wastewater going the way that some of the people around the table want. So I personally would have preferred more in-depth options, but given what the resolution says, we will be getting iterative financial information. I guess what I'm most interested in is not just the cost of the pump station, because to me that's not the big deal. The big thing is how we look at the wider network and the risks and the redundancy or resilience that we heard about earlier, and that's where the costs will be. And I'm also, I guess my own view is that D2 would be better worded if the mover of the amendment would consider it to, it's not so much just the construction project in my mind, which I agree with Councillor Risselboom that would have been consulted and known in the LTP. It's more the wider strategic plan, and I don't feel we always talk around these issues, and fundamentally the issue that I see is that are we committing more and more and more to putting massive stakes in the ground around Tamonga, and that's our long term for everything in that corridor. Is it not, have we actually done the thinking but don't want to talk about it out loud? I mean, to me, we need to actually get into proper conversations, not just with the iwi, but the developers as well, and actually start working through that, because otherwise it'd be like the solid waste issue, where for years it was talked around and the plan was built up to the point that we got government funding, and then all of a sudden, complete change of plan by the looks of it. And we're not going to put all our eggs in the Tamonga basket. So I think we run the risk of doing a tweak of that version. My last comment would be, I would strongly encourage our finance team and our new CFO, when he or she is appointed, to talk to Treasury. I've tried to talk to Treasury about discount rates. I honestly think we have not got it right on discount rates. I think we need to, if we're going to use MPVs and discount rates, we need to understand it. We need to talk to Treasury. They will not engage with elected members from councils. I'm sure they hopefully must engage with our CFO, because that distorts numbers. It's distorted it for Te Manawataki or Te Papa. It may not have distorted it here. I have no problem with Fraser's comment that that's not my issue. I think this is a perfectly fine MPV thing from my point of view, but some of those other ones get pretty dodgy. So I would really look at that as an action point.
Councillor Schuler.
Thank you, Mayor. It was a really interesting discussion around the table. Good information that we got from staff. I suppose from my point of view, and I'm aligned with Councillor Roseboom on this, this is a long-term project that has been in the pipeline, excuse the pun, for a long time. I disagree a bit with the Deputy Mayor. This is our long-term plan. It's part of what we're committed to do to deliver critical infrastructure, and there are real signs out there that we've been sweating the asset, and these are tough decisions. Enjoyed hearing Councillor Morris's views on the different angles and the different lenses we can look through it, but for the funding risk that we have been asked to approve today to maintain what is absolutely critical infrastructure, I think we need to approve what's here. I think D2 is a broader and a different conversation that has been had. There may be certain recent iterations and lack of communication, but the broader perspective on how we work through those relationships with Ngā Pōtiki and what the ultimate long-term future of Te Maunga and that's a different discussion for this. I think we need to make the right decision today. So I'll be supporting all other than 2D.
Okay, any further discussion? Like we're in a very tough situation here because we're sort of deciding between literally having poo in the streets to having a $31 million piece of growth infrastructure that's going to go potentially back to the ratepayer to fund. So, these are sort of some of the tricky things we have to make the decision. I'm disappointed that we haven't been given options, for example, for Te Puke. We have a regional deal we're negotiating, and I think I think it would have been prudent to wait a little bit longer to try to understand where that lies and whether there is an alternative solution, because potentially we're building a white elephant that is never going to be used to the capacity. We've heard obviously that there is staging to help with that, but this is not an ideal scenario, and I don't think we've been given the wide range of options that should have been looked at as to potentially other ways to service this infrastructure. In saying that, I can see the wider picture, and ultimately we get more money back by doing this than we do if we don't do it. And like we can, I guess, look at that and say, ultimately we're financially better off. But I think there was other ways and timings that we could have addressed this issue. However, I do understand where we're at. I guess my conditional, and you can't conditionally support something, but certainly my direction to staff is, to go to Councillor Morris's point, the reason that Te Tumu is looking at alternative options is because the cost of our infrastructure is too expensive, and we have to go and look very hard about the cost of us delivering infrastructure and bring it in line where it's a no-brainer for Te Tumu that they do not want to consider another option, because this is their best financial and best viable option. So, that is the challenge to staff, that they need to go away and do a lot of work to try to find a way to deliver this at a much more reasonable cost. And this is not just for this project, this is across the city, because we're going to keep running into this, that we take, we're putting the risk on the ratepayer because our cost of delivering infrastructure is too high. And that is a real challenge. We can be innovative, we can find different ways to do it, but currently we are spending too much to build this infrastructure. And we're talking about getting wastewater about 9 kilometres, and that's going to cost us hundreds of millions of dollars. And when you've got a development that says we can deliver a new wastewater treatment site on site for less than we can pump sewage 9 kilometres, we have a serious problem. So, I think that is the challenge to staff going forward, that we've got to find ways to deliver these for a much more reasonable cost. So I will support this, but there is a very clear message to staff that we have to go and deliver this infrastructure in a different way, and if we do that, we take out that funding risk, because growth will pay for growth, and this won't become a white elephant. So, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. You're not finished. You weren't moving and seconding? No. Okay, good. Yes, I would reiterate some of that sentiment. I think we here, Tauranga City Council does waters well, and yet we're bringing forward a decision that doesn't really have any options, other than to have waste in our waterways. And I think that's those two things to me don't fit well together. Again, on the costs, this has been forced upon us because our infrastructure costs are so high. We are looking at regional deals and a joint water strategy, and yet we haven't talked about an alternative of looking at the Te Puke site. So I just think, yes, I don't feel there is an option other than to support this, but I don't like being in a position that is where we end up. And I do think we're going to say it more often, we're going to keep saying it, we do need to think of different ways. We do need to figure out how we have infrastructure that is at a reasonable cost. And do we have a reputation that Tauranga Waters has done well because we've just spent far more money than we need to on it? And these things keep coming back to me. And again, not having the numbers that we're actually approving in the paper concerns me. Whether we've had it in another paper before, somebody looking at this, if they want transparency, it's not transparent what numbers we're approving. I have gone back to Appendix 4, which is highlighted yellow, and try to tie that into the list of capital projects we've approved for this year, and looking at for next year, the numbers don't tie up. So we just need to be better, and I don't like being in a situation where we are almost being forced into having to make a decision that has got a potential high cost for our people in the future.
Councillor Rolleston, your right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for all the commentary. And look, I think I totally agree with what's been said around cost and around the Te Tumu, how do we get that on. But we're sort of between a rock and a hard place here, that the infrastructure is needed. It's a significant decision. It's a significant cost. So on balance, as I said, I support this. Just picking up on the amendment that I have made, I think it is sticking to our guns. I think it is doing what we should be doing. We've already heard from GM Operations that she will want to be speaking to Spencer, the CEO of Ngā Pōtiki. I think it would be wrong if we said that we weren't going to ensure there was engagement and communication with Ngā Pōtiki alongside this construction project. But I also want to point out, it was only a month or so ago where we said we want to work with Ngā Pōtiki on Te Maunga around the whole of the precinct. You can't say this is not part of the precinct, because we know this is all connected and where it ends up, and there's a cumulative impact. So I think that's the appropriate way, and of course preserving the relationship with it. So we're probably really saying BAU up there, but let's put it up there so it's very clear. So yeah, that's why I'll be ensuring that I support the amendment as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to take this in parts. So I'm going to take the whole resolution except for D2. So we're voting on everything but D2. And I ask all those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Now I'm going to take just D2, and I ask all those in favour? Aye. Those against? Councillor Schuler and Councillor Roseboom. That is also carried. Thank you, everyone. That moves through, and can I ask the team please to communicate that with the two developers that have asked to be kept in the loop around the decision on that. We now move on to 11.2. This is on page 48. This is elected members' remuneration, allocation and expense policies. We have a couple of things to consider here. Firstly, there is elected members' pay, and this is driven by the remuneration pool, which is allocated by the Remuneration Authority. So that's around how we split that pool. There isn't any option around this apart from how that's allocated. We then have a couple of issues to discuss which involve some of the changes to the remuneration policy and some of the direction that we have given. So I just note the remuneration numbers have been suggested by myself working with staff, and so I'm happy to answer any questions on those, but I will hand over to Jeremy if he'd like to discuss any part of this, or he can answer questions.
So now the intro is done beautifully, thank you very much. The only thing I would suggest, just for clarity, if you decide to go with option C in the security allowance, that we change the wording to proposes to amend. The report says we'll come back to you with the text of that. I don't intend trying to work out that amendment to the policy on the hoof right now. So we just, if you look at that one, rather than say amends, proposes to amend, and then we can take whatever your options are from there. Other than that, now I suggest you take this in 3 tranches and leave it in your hands.
Okay, Councillor Morris.
Thanks, Mayor. If we went from a team of 10 to the first 15, and there were 15 councillors around the table here, my understanding is that the remuneration, the extra, the available pool would be the same regardless of how many councillors there are. Is that correct? So if during the representation review we make a decision to have more councillors or more representation around the table, that pool would still be the same, or whatever it is. It's not, the number of councillors doesn't affect the pool. That's the question.
Correct.
Any other questions for Jeremy or myself on any of this? Okay, well that's nice and easy. Therefore, I'm happy to move this recommendation. Let me just, there is some options there. So, my guidance would be that we move 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. Sorry, let me just. 5. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the. I'd say 5C and 6A. So there's quite a lot there, and I'm happy to take any bits and parts as we'll have that through the discussion, whether there's things that people want to take in parts or make any changes to. Yeah.
You'll need to add some detail into B and F if you get that far as well.
Yeah. So B, I'm happy to as per the report. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So if we look at B, we'll take that bit first, and that is looking at the table on 51, paragraph 29. So I recommend those numbers 178, 192 and 163 for B. And then, sorry, the others were the options throughout this paper, which if we look at the options analysis is down on page 51, 52 and paragraph 36. So just to reiterate that the eligibility for security systems is, I'm recommending, should be available to all elected members, and my basis for that is it is done on a threat assessment, so it doesn't give you an automatic right to it, but if any of the elected members have, are worried about their safety, they are able to do that. 2A, which is around security threat assessment, should be prepared in-house by staff working to a determined template. Again, I don't think we need a consultant for that. 3A, which is that there is 4,500 for purchase and installation, and 1,000 for annual monitoring call-outs. Again, that would be on the proviso that we ensure we get value for money. So I'm sure we could install a system for under that for most people. Then my recommendation is 4A, that if an elected member changes primary residence, a new application supported by a new risk assessment may be made for the new residence. So that's basically saying that you redo the risk assessment. And then 5, I think I said 5C, which is if elected member's position becomes vacant, including if not re-elected, all allowances, including installation, is scaled back proportionally to the period of financial year that the member was in position. And then 6A, which is approvals of all claims under this part of the policy to be made by the Mayor and Chief Executive, with mayoral claims approved by the Deputy Mayor and one other councillor. So that was the direction. Which deals with, that's C. And then D becomes redundant. Yep. E is around the additional nights accommodation and relevant expenses, which was recommended at our meeting. And then F, sorry, what was that was the meal allowances and yeah, that was paragraph 46. And I'm happy with option 3 there. Which is basically that, yeah, original. I just had a point of clarification to Jeremy there. Original receipt, can that be a photo or an e-version of the receipt?
That would be consistent with what happens with the other expenses at the moment, so probably yes. I mean, it comes then down to yourself, the Chief Executive, or the Deputy Mayor and another councillor to approve what they see in front of them.
Yeah.
I'll leave the judgment to you at the time.
Yeah. And that's just talking about reasonable costs. So that's, so I'm happy to move, as I said. Have I got a seconder for those options? The Deputy Mayor will second that. My discussion on that, I think this is sensible. Obviously, we've got a pool of money that we have to allocate, and you know, tried to keep that fairly consistent. Everyone gets paid the same, with additional responsibilities for the Deputy Mayor. That her salary is between my salary and the councillors, and you know, the part of that was security. I know there has been some issues around the country. I think that's a reasonable addition to go with the Remunerations Authority's recommendations. Again, it's on the condition that a threat assessment has been done and that the system is required. It's not a right just to have a system, but you know, with some of the things that we've seen happen around the country, I think it's a sensible thing to have. And you know, some of those slight amendments around, that's really just around, you know, if you're at a conference or away and you've missed the last flight home because of the finishing time, that you're not left stranded. I think, you know, a reasonable person would say that was fairly reasonable anyway. So it's just really making the policy do what has been followed, and then, you know, talking about those meal allowances about being pretty reasonable. So I think this is hopefully a reasonably simple one, but yeah, happy to have any debate or discussion that anyone wishes to have. Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, I have two things. One is that in terms of the public transport allowance for travel within Tauranga, it's firstly, I'm not sure why it's confined to within Tauranga. It doesn't sort of make sense to me that it is. I would prefer it to not be confined geographically, because if you're travelling to a conference, it's the very time that it would be the most useful in my view. The second part of that is I suspect that I'm possibly amongst the elected members, the one who may have used the Bay Bus service the most, and I don't see why. I mean, I've paid for my B card top-ups, and that's fine. I can afford it, and even more so with the increase in this pay. So I don't think we need to provide that for free to elected members to try to encourage public transport use. I don't think it has that impact. I think it's also, you know, when the Deputy Mayor bikes into the meetings, or Councillor Kurak scooters here, or Councillor Rolleston walks here, you know, to me, like, I shouldn't be getting something extra to pay for my public transport, because they're actually using more low carbon transport modes than I am. So I sort of look at it and think, well, that just seems like a virtue signal rather than something that we should be adding any cost. And I don't think it would add much. I don't think it has added anything. I don't think anyone's claimed for it. So I prefer not to, but I would question why, if it's there, why we don't make it wider geographically. And so if you're in Auckland or somewhere, you can actually get reimbursed if you're going to a council, you know, council-approved meeting. That's the very time I would think it would probably be fair to claim, rather than
well,
using it.
I think there's. I think this is only talking about within city travel, and it's differentiating between public transport that you can claim locally and perceived against a car.
So you can still,
yes, you can claim.
Okay.
Like you can.
Well, that's all right. Well, then I would just personally think that would be good just to nix. The other thing is, I actually would prefer to not increase the status quo amounts for breakfast and lunch, and possibly I eat cheaper than a lot of my colleagues, and have got used to that over the years. But I kind of think there's a component which would be eating wherever we are in the world. Presumably we wouldn't be fasting, we'd be eating, and we'd be paying for some kai, whether we're eating at home or going out for dinner here in Tauranga. So I think it's reasonable to the ratepayers to sort of say, like, put a cap, like to have a no stated amount, and then to find out in a claim, as I recall seeing for one controversial claim when the commissioners were here, it sort of gets quite a talk of the town, and it's unnecessary. And I think we can afford it. We're getting this big remuneration authority increase in what we're earning. So I think it's better just to say, let's keep it as it is. So I'd like it taken in parts, because I don't support that one.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Schuller.
Yeah, just hearing Councillor Crowther then, support right through what you've put there, Mayor, but I probably would be of the same view. Respect there's different opinions maybe around the table, but it's the policy as it's set out. It's fairly simple. I note that you can't include alcohol in that, so that may or may not impact some of the dinner charges. But I think that the system there with the limits is probably it's at a fundamental level, it may not be a big issue either way, but from a message we're sending, the caps that are there that are consistent across the organisation at the moment, I'd probably support Councillor Crowther on that.
Any other discussion? Yeah, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Mahay. I think in terms of public transport, Councillor Crowther, I don't often use the public transport, and I do top up my own B card, and I'm happy to continue doing that. But I like the message that we're actually encouraging each other to use it, and if having it means that each of us uses a bus twice more each year, I think it's a good thing. So I support having it in there, and we can choose not to use that there. In terms of I speak against the suggestion not to go with the reasonable meal allowances. I know it's a pain in the neck when you're looking at the claims coming in and sticking to that. I also know if I'm going out for dinner and it's we share things, saying, oh, actually, I'm not going to have any of those beans or the chips because I'm up to my limit, or we're with people, we're trying to engage and say, actually, I have to pay on 2 cards. To me, I would prefer to be transparent. Our expense claims are open. I'd prefer to know that we're taking it on ourselves, to trust ourselves that we're being fair and reasonable and honest to the ratepayer. So I'm in support of everything that's been put up.
Any other discussion? If there's no further discussion, just to sum up, I agree with the Deputy Mayor. Ultimately, it comes down to every individual as to how they wish to allocate this policy. If you don't want to take up a B card, then you don't have to. If you don't want to claim, you don't have to. And you it sort of gives that right. It's the same with the camera sort of thing. If you don't feel unsafe and you don't want to use that allocation, but I think having the options is a good thing. And then as a political person, you take the risk or not of everything that you put in and take responsibility. So that's my summation. So I will take it in parts. Is it just the E people want? Oh, sorry, just the F. Yeah. Okay. So I'll take all parts up until E, which is up to, and I ask all those in favour. Those against. That is carried. Thank you. And then I'll take F. All those in favour. Oh, sorry, just F, which is food. Yeah. Yeah. So that's all those in favour. Those against. Yeah, sorry. Councillor Roseboom, Crowther, Morris, Schuler, Taylor and Kurang. So that is lost. All right. Was there any, did you want to change it or just status quo? Happy with status quo? Yep, okay. All right, that now concludes that item. And we'll go on.
Point of clarification, does F now become G?
Status quo.
Status quo.
Yeah. Do we need to?
For clarity, because you've adopted E, which is making an amendment, then G is not strictly correct, but so you don't need G. And F, obviously, if you don't pass a resolution, then nothing changes. So status quo is by default what happens.
Okay, we'll leave that there as status quo. So now we go to 11.3, draft 2026 council and committee meeting schedule. I note you'll all have a handout on that one, and thank you for the work yesterday. So I'm happy to take if there's any questions on that. Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, thank you for the printout, which is helpful to sort of see the latest version. Is it intended that the number of meetings are different to what's stated in the agenda for some of those, the council and committees?
It's not intended, but the report was written 2 weeks ago and the schedule here was written yesterday. So there is a difference now. There's one less city futures and one less city delivery. So the report is out of date because the schedule has been changed.
And I guess question to the mayor and deputy, I guess, in terms of, is that okay in terms of the number of council meetings to also be one less, one fewer, maybe?
Yeah, sorry, is it got the 15th in there? Yeah, so yeah, we've got one more 15th for a council meeting. Sorry, was it of December?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Was a placeholder there.
So two in December.
Yeah.
And then I had another question, which is, and I'm speaking selfishly, so the joint Tauranga Western Bay Plenty Transport Committee, I can see why you don't want to clash with mayoral forums and so forth, but I look at the week of the 26th to 30th of May, and given what I understand of some of the transport stuff that'll be happening then, that'll be potentially a very big meeting, and we potentially could have up to 4 days of annual plan deliberations, and I honestly don't think that's good timing to be going into perhaps the most important transport committee meeting that we'll have. Now, there's another issue, which is we may not be having that transport committee at all, but assuming we still do, and we've got live discussions, so if that's there, I would prefer it to be, for instance, the week, like the 13th of May, or the 21st of May, or the 4th of June or something like that. So I'm wondering, does it have to be on a Friday? I know that's a preferred day, but I don't kind of understand if that's a hard fix or something.
Well, I think all these joint committees, etc., at the moment they're placeholders. So that's an agreement with obviously the other parties involved in those. So basically, the council and the committees are we're trying to get prioritise those and put them in, and then everything else works around that. So I think just work with governance to give any of your direction around, and that applies to everyone around the table if there's specific clashes, especially for the chairs of committees, etc. If there's reasons that you can't do certain dates, let's sort of take that offline. But this is a draft, and it's certainly not set in stone. But certainly the direction has been we want to see where these meetings are as early as we can, so people have the ability to plan around them. So that's probably the direction. I'm happy to offline, if you've got any direct issues with things, feed that through to governance, and they can work with the relevant parties elsewhere to fit those in.
Yeah, I've certainly got some clashes with the changes from yesterday,
Okay.
so I'm not
Yep.
sure what to do with those.
Well, I think you take that up with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Try to find a solution.
Are the joint committees solely TCCs penciling in the initial dates for smart growth, for regional transport committee, public transport
Yep.
committee, all that? So
Yep.
that's not Bay of Plenty Regional Council
No.
putting forward those dates?
No.
Because I think they will need to change.
So they were
by the
all
looks of
aligning
that.
with similar dates this year, so that's just so you can kind of see the overall, but yeah, I'm not sure when do those usually?
I think they said mid-November, so yeah.
Any day.
Yeah, I mean,
Today,
I
perhaps.
think it would be far better to come back, like kind of leave all this, come back in December at the council meeting there when we actually know, because some of these dates won't work for those other councils. And so I think it'd be better to know what constraints there are first before we even, it just seems otherwise it seems such a theoretical thing. We could be changing so many things, because the moment we change all those, we might want to change our own meetings so we don't clash with the workloads.
Well, the reason for putting our meetings in is to prioritise our meetings, so.
But that's what I mean, like that, I'd prefer the other approach where we prioritise a collaborative approach across with our partners and put in the ones in a way that they can actually work with. Because putting, say, PT committee and regional transport committee in the same week for regional council staff, that just seems dumb.
Well, the thing is, okay, well, I'll take that, we'll take all the committees out, and we'll look at all our committees and our meetings, and like that's all we need to worry about right now, because nothing else is finalised. So
It's all draft.
yeah. So obviously Jen will work with governance around the committees, but I think the key thing is we're accepting, a draft gives a pretty good outline of where we're going next year, and if we need to move a day or two here, then now's the opportunity. If we wait until December, the committees will then come in and potentially compromise what we want. So it is agreed by everyone, but I think it's important we put our stake in the ground and say this is what we want to prioritise. So. Yep, Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, just a point of clarification. So if members have an issue with the program, we go back to the staff.
Yep.
Does that come back here and we hash it out again, or does one person's preference push stuff around that may affect everyone else?
Yeah, well, I think that we can take offline.
Okay.
It's at the moment this is really a draft saying this is the idea of where we're going. Gives everyone a bit of a heads up, and then it's to flush out exactly that. If there's real big issues around anything, now is the opportunity to elevate those and sort them out.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we would aim to do that on the 16th of December, because we need to start getting these in your diaries so other things don't come in across the top.
Yeah.
And leaving it to the beginning of next year would be too late. So if we're going to have a second go at this, it's 16th of December.
Yeah.
But just in saying that, it's actually quite late to be doing it, so I would be quite happy to do this without, just for our committee, like for our councils and 3 committees, I would be really comfortable having done that in August, like to do it in August next year for the following year. So, because that's when I've had to accept my other commitment. So it's and that's not trying to say all of the joint committees, they can go in second. If we had in place next September, then the year forward, then the other ones can slot in place. But I just would like, can we suggest for next year that comes a bit earlier, just with the committees, and then it's committees and council, and then it's much clearer, please.
Yeah. So I'm happy to move for recommendations, and I'm happy to move C, the OR, which is notes that the final calendar committee does not need to come to be formally reported back to council. I'm quite comfortable with doing that offline, and yeah. But I agree with the Deputy Mayor. This is to try to get it out as early as we can so we have those options and we can have those discussions. So, yeah, Councillor Roseboom will second. There's nothing really more to discuss, just to say, this is the draft, and hopefully we'll get something that works for us all going forward. So, thank you to staff.
We haven't really done that. If you don't want to have a preferred alternative day, we just need to take that out of the resolution. 3-1. Because that's saying you're doing something at the moment, but
Do we want to confirm an alternate day? If we can't do a meeting on a Tuesday, do we want to confirm a day, or we just work?
We do that. That goes into the one that we figure out how it works best.
yeah, that's all right.
Okay. No, it's not material. It's yeah.
Can you clarify then to Councillor Taylor's point? Like, how do we go about deciding once we see the joint committees? Because it's easy to do our ones are simple. You just pick the dates and put them in. The issue is gelling it with the rest of the region. So how do we, if there are issues that come up, what is the process to actually determine that? Normally that's in a council meeting. If we're not going to report it back to a council meeting, how do we actually do that?
Well, I guess at the moment we can only control our committees.
I'm saying once, yes, of course. So like we're doing our committees, that's fine. But that's just sort of like the first cut. And we saw what happened this year, and the end of last year when there were some bad clashes. So if we don't want those clashes, if, say, a group of councillors don't, the question I've got is what is the process? I'm not worried about the details of the clashes. I'm just saying we don't have a process for that because we're now saying nothing has to be formally reported back. So how do we do it? Because in the last year what happened was there were one or two people, typically chairs or whoever, seemed to have a backroom conversation, but most of us didn't have any chance to kind of try to get a schedule that was better for in my view, for the city, because you then can put in time to prepare for meetings without having massive clashes.
Well, I think that's where you've got to negotiate with the other parties involved. So my understanding is regional council, who takes the lead on that? They suggest the dates?
Regional runs some of those committees. Like, it's not a question of who's polite or anything. It's their committees. So they have to fit around the needs of 6 councils. So we can't expect to sort of have, I'm not suggesting that we need to get it right or wrong at the moment because we don't know. But once we know, what's the process is my question.
Well, then go back to governance with your concerns, and they can take those back.
I'm saying to change our meetings. How do we change our meetings is the question.
Well, feedback if you don't like where the meetings are. But what we're saying is if our meetings are set as of the feedback after this, and so if they come and suggest that they're going to do it on a day we've got a meeting, we'll push back and tell them that that doesn't work for us.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, just confirming that we did work with staff at the other councils just to get a sort of steer on the days, but obviously with the election, the committees are not established yet, and so it's all a bit up in the air. But we are in contact with staff, and we will make sure that we work together to get the right dates.
All right, so we'll take out that, that direction, but okay, so we have a mover and seconder. Anyone else wish to talk to this? No one else wishes to talk. I'll put this to the council. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried. All right, it's now 10:35, so we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 10:45. Thank you. So now we're talking 11.4, which is the long-term plan 2737 process. We're on page 79 of the agenda. Jeremy is back in charge, are you?
Here anyway, I'm not sure in charge. So this report starts off as a bit of a sort of welcome to the LTP, just to lay out what is ahead of you over the next 18, 19 months. But it also includes a refreshing at your behest of the community outcomes and then adopting your priorities and principles, which will be a nice building block for the LTP. If we hear that stuff now early on, it's taken directly from the upgraded schedule that you created. We lock those in now, and that's a nice building block. And yeah, the rest of it is simply just taking you through at a really high level what the process is and a taster. As I said, I've been using the phrase welcome to the LTP report. That's basically what this one is. Happy to take questions throughout.
Sorry, Jeremy, just in that recommendation in G, it's talking about the potential that community outcomes are endorsed, and then it says the current community outcomes included in the existing long-term plan will continue to be reported on against for the next 2 annual reports. I'm just trying to understand why that would be the case.
That's a legislative requirement, so the annual report is actually a report against your LTP as amended by your annual plan. So we need to structure the report so that we've got a clear trail from the LTP right through. The legislation talks about the community outcomes must be in the LTP. It doesn't say the same thing about the annual plan, so the default logic is that you need to report against the community outcomes in the annual report. It doesn't stop us reporting also against these community outcomes. That would be a doubling of effort or a resorting of documents, but I imagine the auditors would be quite quick to put us up if we didn't report against the LTP community outcomes.
But the report goes on to say that the changes are minor. So how would that? I'm just trying to understand how that would actually.
In the mind of an auditor, a minor change is a change. So that still, I mean, you are creating a different 5th community outcome, and you're merging 3 and 4. They will look to see the reporting structure against the original 5.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Sorry, Councillor Roseboom and Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I've got one. It's probably not in Jeremy's wheelhouse, but in paragraphs 26 through to 30, you're discussing around prioritisation of the long-term plan. In it, could we have some mechanism by which we show component failure, life of component versus reputational risk of failure somewhere in the matrix, so we can, when we come to review it, we've got an oversight of our renewals program versus risk of failure, reputational risk in the printing, so we can actually see what the effect would be if we defer a project or delay a project or try and change the cost of a project, the effect that has both from a public service issue, component issue, life issue and reputational risk to the organisation, because some of us probably need a bit more help there.
The answer is probably yes. Yeah. Obviously the LTP is let's say a $5 billion capex budget, of which renewals is a big number, so getting down to component level too often is going to be quite onerous. But certainly I can talk with James about this conversation and just see how that assessment and prioritisation of the renewals profile looks.
Because I'm looking at getting towards the sequencing of projects and how one project is interdependent on another project, and if we start trying to change things around, the effect that it has on the renewals program overall, if we start moving things around.
Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, just a quick one, Jeremy, on point D, we've got a new environment city that embraces events. We have a translation to come. What's the process and how long will that take to actually get that?
We're working with Kieran, who is working with Tangata Whenua. I guess the issue with the original outcomes was it wasn't just a translation, there was a story. Yep. and it just takes some time to find the right story and to get the right people involved in that. So if I said to you, would likely come back in the first council meeting of next year with some information, that's reasonable, I would have thought.
Yep, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Mahay. So just, I guess, checking wording, because I think in terms of the prioritisation process, I think we're still working on some of the work we want to do on how we prioritise projects, and I think there's a process here. And it does say that we will B and C tie in, that we can have more than one go. I just, from a governance perspective, when we say endorses the prioritisation process, I don't want to find that I hear staff say, but you approved that this is the way you look at things, because I don't think we're quite there yet. So does endorses mean we don't disagree with it, or it means that's what we're doing? What does the word endorses from your perspective mean?
From my perspective, that would say what we're doing is we're taking the information provided at the workshop and bringing it into a formal environment, and that you endorse the general direction of travel on that. There'll be words and bits and pieces which are different when we get to the final version. And C says that we will get to a final version at some stage. So if you wanted to take endorses and says notes, even at this stage, notes and agrees with contingently, I mean, it's...
Well, I think from my perspective, when we looked at some of the way that we were looking at capital projects, for example, into the future, there's a chunk that say that it's almost too late to change, these are already here, and there'll be the sequential ones that come from that, and then we got left with there was only a small chunk that we sort of to be assessed. Well, I think there's some further up that we actually should be assessing as well now, because although they might have been there, and this again relates to my question in the previous comments about the wastewater plant and the cost we've actually approved in that. So to me, we're not quite there in terms of the prioritisation process we've been through. And I think from a sports and recreation, parks and reserves, I think there's quite a lot of work we're still doing on why we would prioritise that sports field versus that community venue. And I think we've got some work to do. So I would prefer it to say notes, the proposed prioritisation process, rather than endorses, because I'm certainly not quite there yet. Thank you.
Yeah, and just through you, Mr. Mayor, the process here is about the process. So, for instance, the fact that through the LTP there will be some committed projects is probably agreeable. What those committed projects are is very much your decisions. So you have different views around the table as to whether that big rock is actually something we are committed to and have been committed to, or whether we can actually break whatever commitment. So the process is about, there will be some committed ones and there'll be some renewals, and then the detail is what you'll spend the next 12 months, 18 months of your life working through.
Yeah, and I think, overall, I'm supportive of this. The strategic alignment, I think, is the key to it, and that's looking at projects and sort of running that sort of prioritisation over through that strategic alignment. How does it align with what we're trying to do? That's probably the bit that I'd just like to highlight going forward. And that this is, I'm sorry, I'm just getting this from the table on page 94, which is prioritising projects in that sequential process. So, yeah, I think. I'd almost put that strategic alignment at the front of it to kind of ask that question: does it align strategically? If it does, and it's sort of, it's a sort of a hard one. If it's under construction, then it's a bit hard to change. But certainly that's the key bit for me. Any other questions on?
Just on that, Mayor, I understand your thinking. I suppose we've probably been through a discussion this morning about something that's been going on for 20 years. Councillors come and go every 3 or 4 and may choose or not choose to change some of that strategic stuff. I think we'd be careful if we put that in front, you know, there could be examples that we'd put ourselves under situations where we do have projects that we have to deliver that we may be able to chop and change. So I'd just be cautious in moving that. Strategic alignment's critical, make no mistake.
Councillor Crowther.
Jeremy, when would be, from a staff perspective, in time, and when would it be too late to add another underpinning principle?
I suggest that today was a day to do it if you get the agreement of your colleagues. Beyond that, you know, it can change. Principles is something which is not legislatively required. It just allows us to understand you better. So if something came up in 3 months' time, it's not going to change the world as far as being too late at that stage.
If there's no other questions, see if we've got a mover and a seconder for the recommendation.
I'm happy to move with that change.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's.
I'd be happy to move it, but change endorses to notes,
Yeah.
just to give us, yeah, and B.
Okay, Councillor Roseboom will second that. Any, would you like to speak to it, Deputy Mayor?
I would. I think it's great that we have got the timeline of the long-term plan, because we've already had conversations where you need to do this because it's in the long-term plan. I think we've been waiting a long time to do a long-term plan and own that. I think a couple of things for me, it's important. When I first read this, I felt that this wasn't looking like we owned it, and even in the tables, it says this is what happens and this is when we become involved. So table 1, this is the process pieces, building the foundation, and this is when we have to make decisions, whereas I'd like it to be the other way around. This is when we have to make decisions and this is what we need to make those decisions, for example, but that's something we can influence. I also felt that because it's such a big process, that we would have a properly detailed timeline, as in, you know, a Gantt chart of these are the projects that are happening. Jeremy tells me that that will be done by the project managers, of which there are a number depending which area they're in, but that way to me we can say this is where we've progressed, this is what we need to do by then, and we don't get papers that tell us you need to do this because it's in the long-term plan and we go, oh well, I'd like to have known. But good to have a process that we are following, good to have this information. I think it's great that we are able to make the adjustment for the community outcomes that we want to do and then be able to go forward with that. So I'm supportive of the resolution with that one little change.
Councillor Roseboom.
Sorry, Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. No, support this. It's a long road, the long-term plan. We are, as council, a huge infrastructure organisation, and our focus is on pipes, roads, parks, sports centres and pools. Starting this early and overlapping it with our next annual plan allows us to link the two together and get a very clear, in our own minds, where we want the city to go, and the city has an opportunity to engage with us and tell us where they think the city should go. So it's an opportunity for us to line things up, but we do have a vast array of commitments already. We have a roading renewal program that's reasonably set, and that just continues year in, year out. We have a large renewals programs in our water space that just continues year in and year out, and we can't do too much about that. When things come to the end of the life, they need to be replaced. But where we can really influence, I think, is around our social infrastructure, pools, courts, sports fields, and what we provide for the people of Tauranga, and arrive at some figures of what we think is a minimum level of service that the people of Tauranga expect from us. And I would strongly urge the people that are listening, get out and get in touch with us and tell us what you think is a minimum level of service so we can start to include it in the process. Thank you.
Any other? Yeah, Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, I've got two issues. The first one won't be a surprise to my colleagues because we've talked this all through, but I'm probably feel a bit like the minority view on the Supreme Court, although Andrew will be shuddering at the thought of me being on the Supreme Court. But my view, yeah, I'm very democratic, Steve. My view is that we shouldn't be tutuing with the underpinning. Sorry, not the underpinning. The what are they called? Community outcomes. I forget the jargon for it, but that we should be changing the underpinning principles. So, reason for that is that I think the work that the Tauranga City Council did under the commissioners for the strategic direction was excellent. I was part of it, so part of the key stakeholder. I was a tiny minor, little, but I saw what was going on, and I thought it was really well thought through. There was a comprehensive engagement, and my observation was that addressed in some of the key stakeholder workshops that I was part of, or other ones that I heard reported back from, some of the sort of jostling for position that happens when you try to set your strategic priorities. And it was done in what I thought was a really well thought through way. And I think we're kind of blundering a little bit into this by separating out the well-planned city and the city that makes it easy to move, it's easy to move around the city. Those two, I think one of the things was that the feedback from the community has been consistent and clear that transport needs to be elevated to the highest priority. And the other thing that's come through repeatedly for the last decade at least is that we need a better planned city. And a lot of that is not like staff have got a hand tied behind their backs when they try to do this stuff. But in terms of our collaboration with central government and with our developers and other partners, that's a huge priority. And they're both big chunks of work. And of course there's a connection. Of course the Connected Centres is aiming to sort of look at that. But these are two well thought through processes. And it was explicitly acknowledged that events should not be at that high level. That events was sort of like a subset that stacked underneath that. And I know many of my colleagues are strongly trying to prioritise events. That can still happen. We have our Events Action Investment Plan. I think that's a perfectly good plan. More importantly, on the ground, there's been a big shift in the way our staff and partner organisations engage around events, and I think it's all for the better. I think there's good collaboration with the funding partners as well. So I sort of look at it and think, why are we spending time and getting staff to spend their time and us to spend money changing this when it's perfectly working, in my view? Like I say, I suspect that's a minority view because we have talked this through before. On the other hand, I think we've really left something important out of the principles. It was raised last year. I want to propose it as an amendment this time, which is to add affordability there. We've talked about value for money. We've talked a lot about value for money. That's valuable. That's something which is, I think, changing the culture here. But it's not affordable. It doesn't address affordability issues. And we've also talked about everyone pays a fair share. We've yet to sort of figure that one out. What does that mean? But again, that doesn't address affordability. To me, affordability is something that is evidentially apparent to be a significant issue in the city. Increasing poverty, increasing deprivation index in various areas of our community. We need to elevate that, in my view. So I would propose an amendment to add the word affordability to the list of underpinning principles under E. And I'll ask for any seconder for that.
So Councillor Curragh seconded that.
So speaking to it, I think we've consistently heard that the tension that we're dealing with in terms of, and will become very apparent in the long-term plan, is that we have a plan that's sort of heading towards initially $3 billion worth of debt when we came on board, now closer to $4 billion, according to the latest estimates. And we could rein that back to $3 billion potentially, but it'd still be $3 billion, which was seen at the time as being a major issue for the city. And we heard our former CFO say very clearly that most of the impact on ratepayers comes from the capital program, which is funded primarily by debt, and that if we want to shift the rates impact, we can't just do it through user fees and charges and things like that. We have to actually address some of those projects that will be in the plan. So to me, this is the perfect opportunity to put in a principle which doesn't overwhelm the others. It doesn't take away anything from the importance of looking after what we've got or all these other things that are in the plan and that could be in the plan in the future. But to not have that lens through it, to me, is missing one of the major things that we've heard since we've come on board, which is that, rightly or wrongly, a large number of people in our community are saying affordability is an issue, and it particularly hits a number of minority groups, people who are ill, who are disabled, who are elderly, who have young families, solo parents. So all those Māori, Pacifica, ticks all the boxes that if we're trying to help the people most in need, that will make a significant difference potentially to what goes through our thoughts as we decide this plan.
Councillor Correct.
Thank you. In seconding that, even though the Local Government Act, through regulation, imposes requirements around affordability, etc., it's good as a principle for this council to really focus in on that when we, design our 10-year plan. So, very supportive of adding it.
Councillor Morris.
Speaking to it, look, it's on the fly, but that's okay sometimes. Hey, and
we can have a pre-meeting. So.
A pre-meeting or a pre-meeting? No, I think if you look at what our community is saying in surveys, both national polls, local polls, scientific polls, Facebook polls, man, woman on the streets, the cost of living is the number one issue that everybody is saying is the number one issue. And so I think that it is appropriate that it's reflected, Councillor Crowther. Yeah.
You have a discussion? Deputy Mayor.
It's a really tough one because it is of real concern, and I am very aware of that, but I don't support putting a principle in that actually we would struggle to act under. I think in terms of affordable, as a biker I could say, well, let's stop building flipping roads, right? Because they're not going to, because that capital spend over the next 20 years is going to make it unaffordable in 20 years, and we might have a whole lot of self-drive cars and we actually might not need those roads. We're not having those discussions. I don't know whether we will before the long-term plan, but in the regional deal, when we're saying let's just keep building roads, we're not really saying, is it affordable to keep thinking we can all drive into work in single vehicle cars and build more roads to cope with that? It's not affordable for the city or any city, but we're actually not looking at the alternative option there. Are we, in terms of we absolutely looking for value for money, but we still have to build, we do still have to, with the wastewater decision we've made this morning, is that affordable? Not if we don't get, not if it becomes a white elephant. So I believe that that's something we all consider, but I am not sure we can actually put it as a principle because we've got requirements that we have to do that are actually almost unaffordable. And there are, you know, the cost of the development contributions for an affordable house. I don't think an affordable house exists in Tauranga because of the cost of land, because of the development contributions, because those costs are real when we can't subsidise somebody that needs that funding by charging it elsewhere, because we're saying everyone pays a fair share. So I don't disagree with the concept of affordability, but actually, are we in a place to live by that as a principle? A question to my team.
Yeah, I probably agree. I don't actually have an issue with affordability and having that as a principle, but my challenge is, you know, what is affordable? Because what's affordable to me might be different to what's affordable to someone else. And I would say what's underpinning all this is all our principles deliver affordability ultimately, as much as we can. But you know, I sort of agree with the Deputy Mayor. If we are actually going for affordability, that may contradict. You know, that might mean that growth can't pay for growth, because actually that makes properties unaffordable. You know, if you actually look at that, if we're saying that you know it costs, DCs are actually a cost of 200,000 per section, you know, potentially that means that makes that section unaffordable, and therefore you know we're not actually delivering affordability. So I struggle with that, but I don't struggle with the word affordability, and I think it's got to be at the back of our minds, all you know, through all our decisions, that are things still affordable for our people. And you know, that's a sort of a, while it might not be one of our underlying principles, I believe our underlying principles deliver on that. But I think it's a very hard one to judge ourselves on when it's very subjective as to what affordability actually means. Any other discussion? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, if I may, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with your sentiment. I think affordability, I think, for me, sits there in the concepts that are under E anyway, and that we are looking after. We've just heard, you know, from our warders that they've been sweating an asset out there for a long, long time. At some point, it becomes, you know, can you afford to do it, or it becomes an issue, can you afford not to do something? So again, the word itself and the subjective nature of it is a real challenge for me. So I agree in principle, and I certainly, by not supporting this, I'm not saying we go gung-ho and just do what we want. I think the principles that we've got there do cover, as you said, Mayor, the principle that of making sure that what we do, all our decisions around this table, it's factored in, so I won't be supporting.
Councillor Roseboom.
Thanks, Mayor. Now, these are actually our principles. Since we got elected, we've had multiple conversations around the table around what we want to achieve during our term. We've had lots of discussions about arriving at these 6 principles. These are our principles. We've decided and agreed that this is our way forward. This is what's going to shape our decisions going forward, and this is what's going to shape us annual plan-wise, long-term plan-wise going forward. I don't disagree that affordability is another key one. We discussed that at length around the Mayor's table, around what we think is affordable, but also agree with the Mayor, what is affordable, what's affordable to 1/3 of the community is considered to be quite cheap to another third, and it may be unaffordable to another third. We have a very diverse population in Tauranga. Some of us are quite reasonably comfortable, some struggle. That's the nature of a large city. We have a very diverse population. Our goal is not to comment on their current situation, but is to provide the means by which they can live the life that they choose to live in the best way possible. If we have to compromise on the odd capital program to get it across the line, that's fine, we'll compromise. But as we're going to be hopefully doing with Cameron Road Stage 2, but our goal should be to make Tauranga a better place to live for everyone who lives in it. And that's going to be a kind of point that I'm going to try and make all my decisions around. We're trying to make Tauranga better. So adding that is, no, that'll be an underlying principle that all of us will have in the back of our minds as we make our decisions. But these ones on the page in front of us right now are the ones that we have agreed to and committed to support through the annual, long-term plan process.
Councillor Rolleston.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, as someone that came in when these were already existing through the annual plan, I guess of my first comment, I would have sort of ensured that there was a mana whenua overlay across them, and there may be. But if we start talking about paying a fair share, I'll pause there and go, paid a fair share already. So we're making sure that we're not just talking around the future, because if we're talking about paying a fair share, we must take those in the true meaning. And I would sort of make the point that tangata whenua here in Tauranga have paid a fair share already. So we need to be thinking about that as we make decisions going forward. And look, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here, because I would have expected these conversations would have happened already, but I am emphasising that growth pays for growth. Again, if I put a lens across that, I would say that growth has come across just about every decision of growth has had an impact. So picking up on Councillor Crowther's affordability, look, I've been privy to some iwi data in the last few weeks that are appalling in terms of people living in poverty, and Māori living in much more than the average across New Zealand, and some of the iwi stats I've seen are even worse. However, so affordability is relative, and I suppose if you pick up some, if you drew a line with the conversation earlier this morning around all this growth, and in one context you've got developers saying we've got to get on with this and build houses, and you'll probably flip across to Ngā Pōtiki and saying at what cost. So I guess my point is, whether affordability is in there or not, I'm sort of agnostic to it, but when we're looking at all of these things, we need to look at them collectively within this, and I would have expected that we would have thought about those things when we're putting these things together, but I guess I'm reminding of the importance of these words and how we interpret them going forward, because if we literally interpret them paying a fair share, you sort of go, well, everyone pays X amount because that's the cost, but let's not forget the fair share that got us to where we've got to today. So I just want to re-emphasise that I wasn't here when these principles were developed, but make sure that we interpret them in their fulsome rather than just the words being simple. Thank you.
Right, if there's no further discussion, happy to put the amendment to the council, and that is around adding the word affordability to the principles. All those in favour? Sorry, can we just raise our hands? That's Councillor Morris, Crowther, Rolleston and Kurak. All those against? That's Roseboom, Schuler, Taylor, Deputy Mayor and myself. So that's lost. So we go back to the substantive.
Sorry, Mayor, can we, in this point, actually have a couple of bullet points about the reason that we didn't support it? Because I don't want it to just look as though we don't agree with affordability.
Yeah.
We do want to be affordable, but we recognise that we believe that the current principles which we're working on are driving towards that, but we also need to recognise that some of the capital spend that we do could be seen as unaffordable, but it's actually necessary.
Yeah. Okay.
Or some such words.
To make a note of
Thank
that
you.
in the minutes. All right, we're back on the substantive. So is there anyone else that wishes to discuss anything more there? If not, I'm happy. Oh, Councillor Schuler.
Sorry, Mayor, that's a big day of speaking for me. I just want to get my Councillor Morris on the screen with me as much as possible. I suppose, we have discussed this a lot, as Councillor Roseboom said earlier. I was, as I'd voiced, happy to have things as they were, and until we deal with the long-term plan, leave them as they are. But, notwithstanding, understanding and respecting around the room that our flavour needs to go across. And certainly, as staff have said to us when they are planning and working, often months, years in advance, that they need guidance from us where we are. So not what we don't agree with, but what we do agree with and what we do want to do. So I suppose D&E, when you look at it on the balance, they do reflect the messages that we have been saying to staff over the last year, particularly through E. And I do feel that it does encompass the concept of affordability completely. So happy with where we got to there. On D, the last one obviously is a change. Councillor Crowther talked about combining a well-planned city that is easily to move around and discuss the differences there. And I understand that, but I don't think what is here takes away from either of those important principles. So we are not undermining or taking anything specifically away. And adding in the concept of events, again, I understand where he's coming from, but again, it's a nuance, it's a finer detail, I suppose, that does give direction that we do want a welcoming city, that we do want more people to come here and spend their spare money. We do want to use as much as we can, the amazing asset we've got and the facilities and amenities we have. So, that is a flavour that we've all discussed and talked around the table consistently. So happy to see that in there. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, would you like to sum up, or you?
I'm happy to say that Councillor Schuler did that very well for me. Thank you.
All right. So now I'll put the resolution. Which part would you like? Okay. So I'll take all the recommendation but D and E. Sorry, D and E. And I ask all those in favour. Those against? That is passed. Now I'll take D. All those in favour of D. Those against? Councillor Crowther against. That is carried. And E. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Crowther, thank you. That is carried. Thank you for that. We now move on to 11.5 Development Contribution Policy Review 26-27. This is on page 96 of the agenda. I note that we've already had a workshop on this, and this we have had a fairly full discussion. So I'm happy to take the report as read and open up if there is any specific questions. But I think this has probably come from the direction we set at that workshop. So if there's no questions, I'm happy to move through this quite quickly. Yeah, Councillor Crowther.
Can you just clarify the funding scenarios around the QE Youth Centre and Bay Park Arena extension, and sort of tracking through the various phases from FY23, financial year 23, to the present? So from the point of view of someone who's paying development contributions, so we've obviously had interested parties approach us as elected members saying that they are penalised by the approach, but I would like to sort of understand or put into the public arena like the clarity around how this works as succinctly as you can, in terms of from the point of view of someone who's just paying their development contribution. They were paying towards a certain amount for one thing, then they're paying for a certain different amount, and just perhaps talk us through that as best you can, please.
Yeah, sure. That would be a lot easier with a spreadsheet, but I'll give it a go. So, as you know, we fund indoor courts through our citywide community infrastructure DC. and we fund one at a time. We had a bit of a discussion about that last week, which is a choice a long-standing choice TCC makes, to do one at a time. The reason it's funded through the citywide is because we view the indoor courts as functioning as a network that supports a whole city's worth of activities. Each project costs a different amount of money, and the DC policy really just comes back to the maths of here's what we're spending in terms of CapEx budget, and here's how many dwellings we think it supports based on our adopted level of service. So indoor courts, we have an adopted level of service of 13,000 residents per court. So what that means is that as we add new courts to the network that provide for growth, those courts come online at different price points. Some of the dialogue we've seen, I think we're probably thinking of the same dialogue, Councillor, is that because courts come on at different prices, it then impacts the charge that each dwelling pays. So if you bring on a very expensive court, for example, the courts that were proposed to replace the QEYC courts, which were expensive for a number of reasons, and then you remove those from the policy and replace them with cheaper courts, for example, Bay Park or the Haumaru courts on Cameron Road, the price then goes down. In each case, a developer in any given year was contributing for their share of a court, but the price point of that court changes over time. And that's not a DC policy decision. That's the DC policy as a reaction to decisions made at council about what infrastructure is being provided when and at what price point.
That's really helpful. Appreciate that. And can I just clarify, the other thing is the development contributions policy versus reality. So we have a certain level of service provision, and we say it's X number of courts per Y number of people, and that's based on, I think, Sport New Zealand information and our own analysis and agreed to by council. And then we have the situation where we opened up Haumaru and we kept Queen Elizabeth Youth Centre open, and we hear that the provision of that that the uptake was higher than was kind of anticipated, you could say, by the DC's policy. And so I guess my question is, given that, and given that it seems kind of bleeding obvious that the reason for that is because we've got so many more people here who play sports and recreational activities. So why doesn't the DC's policy reflect that reality? In other words, when you set the amount that's for level of service and the amount for growth, surely, it just seems to me fairly obvious that we would need more courts on this side because of the growth, but we can't claw back a lot of that because we're saying we've redefined the level of service. And it seems to take away our growth pays for growth funding approach, because at the very time that we're sort of implementing that, there's been, or within a short period of time, there's been an increase in the level of service, which means that you get fewer DCs. And so part of the argument now is, well, we've got Haumaru, we've got QEYC, and then we've got this question around Bay Park Arena, but we're not going to get back the amount of development contributions that's really going to reflect the growth, because the whole uptake in that, a lot of that is just from past growth.
Right. Are you suggesting that the actual use of the courts is greater than our level of service that we have set at the moment?
I'm suggesting that if the level of service had remained the same, we would have been able to get more from growth, because my understanding is you don't work out the growth impact, or you don't work out the development contributions based on the reality of the growth. You actually look at what the level of service is, and then you sort of work with what's left.
So if you catch up on level of service, then you can charge more for growth. But the problem is, because we've been behind, then we haven't been able to charge the DCs. So,
but in the case of these facilities, these particular facilities of Haumaru, QEYC and Bay Park Arena, the level of service changed at the most inopportune time, from what I can see, because it means we don't get as much growth funding. And an example of that is part of that complaint, like you said, being that some of that, the development contributions were initially higher, And then the information I've received from staff is that then the level of service changed, as well as the costs of the different courts are different.
So I suppose it depends what we're talking about when we say level of service. When I say level of service, I'm thinking about the adopted benchmark. So that's that 13,000 people per court. The actual provided level of service in terms of how many courts we actually have is sort of a different thing, but related, I suppose. So I guess we've got our benchmark, if we call it that, and then we've got our provided level of service in terms of the number of courts available for use in the city that TCC owns. That number of courts has fluctuated over the last couple of years as decisions in this chamber, preceding this council and this council, have changed over time. For example, the lifespan of the Mount Indoor Court, for example, which was going and now is being kept indefinitely or sort of permanently for DC purposes, QUIC as well. And so as those numbers move, because we're dealing with 11 or 12 courts, and we're just about at the right amount of courts for our current population, as you add in 1 or 2 courts or come back 1 or 2 courts, it can have quite a big impact, which can seem counterintuitive at first, because you're sort of thinking, I'm sitting here, I was paying towards brand new courts that were very expensive, largely because of the land that it was being built on at Memorial Park, being, not super solid. I'm no engineer, but then being replaced in the DC policy by much cheaper courts, and so that's why it makes people look and say, I paid $1,000 for a court last year, and now you're charging people this year $250. Which is the nub of that problem, I think, but as a reaction to decisions made here rather than decisions made in the policy.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess just to be very explicit, this happens all the time with development contributions, doesn't it? So there will be people who will be, if you like, worse off, in inverted commas, and there'll be some who will be better off. And it is tough on the ones who the timing is wrong for, but it's out of your control from the point of view of setting the fees, because you're reflecting what's made around this table.
I think
have I got that right?
The other point to note is that if you look specifically at community infrastructure, yeah, sure, some of them have come down, but if you look at the whole citywide DC charge, that's certainly gone up significantly over time. So while they might now pay a little bit less towards indoor courts, if they were paying their fee now, they would be paying many thousands of dollars more towards wastewater, water supply. Overall, they are better off than what they paid at that earlier point in time.
Just a very quick question. Where does that money go? We've collected for Memorial Park courts. We haven't built Memorial Park courts. We've gone to Homeroos. So does that just get transferred?
Yeah, so while we collect for named projects, generally, Bay Park Arena Extension, Amaru, the LGA, Local Government Act, requires us to spend for the purpose we collected rather than on the exact project we collected for. So it'll just be transferred over.
Thank you. All right. Therefore, again, I'm happy to move this. Oh yeah, sorry.
This is just for the public. Tauranga hasn't always had a development contribution policy. When did we introduce it?
Early 2000s.
Yeah, and before that we ran a very similar policy as financial contributions under the RMA, so that would have been way back into the 1990s.
Cool. I'm happy to move. Is there a seconder? Councillor Taylor. Any discussion? Yeah, Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, I'd just like to acknowledge the point in the report coming in item C, which specifically talks about incentivising accommodation in the CBD and how we can try and encourage that going forward. So good to see that as something that's been this movement.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable step. We're trying to not make huge changes now, knowing that we've got potentially development levies coming in within the next short period. So we can look at those changes, and potentially, I know there's been a lot of talk in the community around moving the development contributions to subdivision or resource consent rather than building consent. So just aware we've heard those those discussions, and as we look at levies, we'll look at those options. But that may be the only option we have on those. So, just to allay everyone's concerns, we are listening, and we do understand there's some big changes that we could be looking at in the next couple of years. Now put that to council. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. We are now going to shift into publicly excluded. So I ask, Deputy Mayor's move, and Councillor Rolleston will second that. All those in favour of going into publicly excluded? Those against? That is carried. We will